Hello, everyone. Welcome to the MII TED Talk Club. We've just watched a video by Tiffany Watt Smith about the history of emotions. And now we're going to hear from the panel. They're going to discuss different aspects of that video and how it relates to mediation, dispute resolution, and dealing with people, I suppose. If anyone on this call wants to come in, raise your hand and we'll bring you in once we've heard a little bit from the panelists. I'll introduce them one by one and then ask them a fairly generic question. And then we'll get into a bit more depth. So first up, Michael Lang is a mediator with more than 40 years of experience in the areas of family, workplace, organisational, congregational and public policy disputes. He's the founding director of the Master of Arts programme in conflict resolution at Antioch University, amongst other works. He is the author of The Guide to Reflective Practice in Conflict Resolution. Welcome, Michael. The first question is always much the same. Can you maybe say one thing about the video that you really took, one lesson maybe that you got from it?
Well, thanks, Scott, and I'm delighted to be here again. What I took is a reminder that the framework that we have for thinking about our own emotions often becomes an assumption that others feel similarly in reaction to the same circumstances that we're in. And that's so completely false. And we know that, but this is a wonderful reminder that we need to take into account who the people are we're talking with, their backgrounds, their cultures, their history, their experience, as well as what's happening for them in the moment.
Okay, so we'll come back to that because I know we had a little discussion off air in that. So we'll come back to the way that the individuals deal with them. Our second speaker is over this side of the Atlantic. Ilona Kuplik left her home country of Germany with her family in 2011 to live in southwest of France. In 2016, they lived in Ireland for a year, where she discovered her love for our island and its people. Since 2019, she's been on the panel of mediators of Family Mediation NI, and she's also an EMIN registered international elder mediator. She's also CEDAR accredited and a member of the Association of European Mediators in Paris. Ilona, same question to you. Give us one thing that struck you about this video.
Yeah, it's a bit similar to what Michael said. It's about how we handle emotions, or how we could or can handle emotions in mediation, and it's about reframing emotional language. So, for example, if a participant says, "I'm afraid," so maybe not to say, "Okay, I hear you're afraid," not to use this language again, but to reframe it in a more neutral, but still in an emotional, not detached way, because we don't want them to feel that they're alone with their fear, but that we can hear them. But it's very difficult, and I have to say, even with my languages I have in my head, I'm very aware of that it's sometimes difficult to find a neutral word, not to make it bigger than it is already the problem. And it's really difficult sometimes. And I'm very aware of that emotions are something which triggers sometimes a little fear in myself as a mediator when I hear that people are, it's not about being upset and crying. So that's even easier then, but if they are really angry and there's language coming out, and I sometimes think, okay, how do I reframe that now without not hearing them? And yeah, it's difficult. That's definitely something I took away from it.
Excellent. So we've got this whole thing about it being a framework and not assuming that people are feeling the same emotions as ours, whilst at the same time having to name certain things, and then you're coming along, following on from Michael with the difficult skill of reframing in mediation. Our third panelist today is Jenny Buzek, who is principal of the Collaborative Communication Group an executive coaching, consulting, and mediation firm based in the Chicago area. For over 20 years, Jane has enjoyed engaging clients as a facilitator, coach, consultant, and mediator at every level and across multiple industries, including federal, state, local government, medicine, law, manufacturing, and pharmaceutical marketing. Jane has mediated hundreds of cases ranging from gang crime to eviction to human rights charges. Well, there you go. That's quite a lot of things in there. And this is all about language. I'm sure you've got into trouble with some language. Jenny, give us one thing from this video that struck you.
Sure. Thank you so much. It's great to be here. So the thing that I was most interested in or struck by in Tiffany's TED Talk was her discussion of ceremony, of ritual. She talked about ceremonies, and I take notes, so I'm reading some of this, helps me stay organized. So she talked about ceremonies conducted to invoke certain emotions and things that actively and intentionally managed emotions, like the leaving out of the water bowl once your guests have left, in order to absorb and then release those negative emotions. And the arts do this, of course, as well. I saw the connection to mediation, and that I see, especially after watching this, mediation is also a ritual. It's a ritual, and it is a very specific process that we use to help our clients understand their own and other people's emotions. Usually it's the case that our feelings or our parties then feel those feelings again in that ritual, in that process. So for example, it wouldn't just be, oh, Joe did this and this made me feel that. It's typically the case that the parties will feel those feelings. And so it's more experiential. So I guess what was interesting to me is that while we want to name and understand our emotions, we want to do something with them. We want to help the parties understand their own emotions and then do something with it. And the doing, in our case as mediators, is to help them figure out a way to communicate more clearly, to be more effective in their relationships, and to improve their relationships and communication. So that's kind of what I took away, is how the mediation process is ritual in helping people get a better understanding of what their feelings and emotions are and doing something with that.
Splendid. Right. Okay. So we've got frameworks, we've got rituals and ceremonies, we've got reframing, and coming back to you, Michael, there's also, I think, a big danger in there in the mediator imposing oneself on the parties. If you've got this framework that we become, I suppose, not inured to, but comfortable with, we should be confident in that element there. Is there anything you want to expand on the assumptions that one can make and the dangers of assuming that somebody's feeling similar emotions because you know stuff? You're on mute. Oh, there we go.
Thanks, Scott. It's so easy, especially as we become more experienced, to assume that people who have a similar kind of dispute will feel similarly, that they will have any emotional reaction, and if they have an emotional reaction, it is likely to be the same as people we've otherwise seen. And there's huge danger in that, because as soon as we do that, we are failing to treat them as individuals. We're making assumptions that are ours, not theirs, and we compromise our own sense of curiosity. We lapse into a sense of certainty. And as soon as we do that, we become rigid, and the process becomes rigid. And the best mediation is one in which it is pliable, it's flexible, it's responsive. It is a process of co-creating the ritual that needs to occur in order for the parties to find their way to whatever sort of resolution makes good sense to them.
Okay, tell me more then, he says, using the typical mediator's phrase. I'm trying not to manipulate things here, but yeah, guys, give an example of what you mean, because mediation isn't homeopathic. Okay, there's elements in there, but if I'm picking you up rightly, it's almost complacent. Is complacency too strong a word? Is it?
I don't think it's too
But
strong at all.
okay. Well, it's the danger of complacency. So, how in a mediation could the people on this call avoid that complacency?
It There are two factors, it seems to me, that are critical. One is maintaining curiosity. And curiosity can't have an end in mind. It has to be open-ended. It can't be that, because otherwise it becomes interrogation. It becomes inquiry rather than broad, open opportunity for the parties to talk to us about who they are and um, and what their experience is and how they want to do it. And the second is, I think that complacency is actually too mild a word in a way. It's accurate, no question about it, Scott. And the worst is when we become self-assured. We are so certain about what something is that we don't allow for the possibility that people see things, experience things, want things different from the way we do. So it's possible that you're meeting with parties and you say, well, I've seen this situation before. I've done hundreds and hundreds of, let's say, divorce matters. And I've seen innumerable couples who've come, they have two children, they have a house, they have this, they have that. I know what this is going to be like. We're going to start out, we're going to first talk about the children, then we're going to talk about the house, then we're going to talk about what we create this ritualistic structure for them without understanding them at all, only to find out. And I'll give you a very silly example that occurred to me. When I was a fresh young mediator many, many years, decades ago, I thought, well, the easiest thing to resolve were the items in people's houses, their furniture, the furnishings, the television set, the washer, dryer, and so on. And so I said to this couple, so we'll save that for last because that's generally the easiest thing to do. They smiled at one another. Then they looked at me, and one of them pulled out from his briefcase a 16-page, single-spaced, typed list of all of the items in their house. And I realized right then that that was going to be the most important thing, and that my sense of it was a brilliant lesson for me. The three of us laughed at my own naivete, my own sense of wanting to impose a structure on them. And they, in a playful and yet serious way, reminded me that it was their structure that mattered, not mine.
And yeah, keep that in mind. The mediator is not the most important one in the room.
Yep.
We're the facilitators. We're the ones that allow them to come to their own, I suppose, resolution. But in that, Ilona, I'll bring you back in here, I suppose. You find reframing difficult.
Mm.
Most of us would find the same problem that Michael has about, you get quite good at mediating, and you've got to remind yourself that this is a new situation every single time and avoid that complacency. Um, what else do you find maybe around the language issues or anything else? What do you find difficult, or what would you like to explore further in this chat about the history of emotions and language?
I think when one of the first things I thought when I was watching it, well, obviously I'm watching it because I think, okay, well, how can we connect this to mediation? And I thought language and emotions are very connected to me as to neutrality. So we have to be neutral, we are not judging and so on. But how can we be neutral without being detached? So, and what does it really mean to be neutral? when it comes to emotions. And I had thought about it, and I think maybe I'm wrong, so I'm asking everybody here. Um, for me, neutrality doesn't mean emotional detachment. So if somebody gets angry or upset or is even naming things and really using language, as long as I don't have to get in the ground rules and so on and to remind them that they have to be this or that. I think I can still name, no, connect to them and say, okay, I'm not only hearing you, I feel you, or and really to give them this idea of, okay, there's not somebody sitting there and saying, okay, here we go again, because that's exactly what they had with their ex-partner or the relative or whoever they are sitting in mediation with. What I want is that, or what I try is that I still connect by being neutral in the way that I will also listen to the other person, so the impartiality coming into it, but to be there and to give them the sense of, okay, I'm not just here because I'm paid and I'm a not lawyer, but a mediator, but I really want them to have this sense of, okay, there is somebody who's really interested, and that's a curiosity, really interested. Why am I angry? Why am I upset? Why do I need mediation? What do I want from this coming out of this and so on. So yeah, that's and this is very, very much connected to emotions, of course. No? So to be open-minded to them and still to give them the sense of, okay, I hear you. I'm here to feel and to hear you.
Okay, so
So am I right with that? Or so it's not about right or wrong, but what do you think? So
I'm only the chair. We'll bring in others, but yeah, if I'm hearing you right, you're talking about acknowledging the emotions that are in the room. And
mm,
I suppose you would also acknowledge if there's movement and change and what people are sometimes viscerally feeling or thinking, or that's coming out, and the language might be part of that.
yeah.
Jeannie, you introduced this whole thing about ceremony and rituals, and it's getting a bit like what do you call him, Rowan Atkinson in Four Weddings and a Funeral, and he messes the whole thing up with the whole goat and all that kind of stuff. Things can go wrong in mediations in the ceremony, but is there anything you want to develop either from what you've heard or pick up or anything around this that you'd like to?
Yeah, well, what's funny is this is such a rich discussion. I have so many thoughts about what Michael said and Alona said, and then there's also a question in the chat about the place of how do you what is the place of emotions in a mediation, and how do we as mediators help place them safely within the mediation process? And two thoughts I had. One is when I think about structure, I'm more thinking about I believe the structure is fine. It's what we need to stay curious about and honor is that the content all comes from the parties. The knowledge, whatever that is, comes from the parties. And a lot of, or that knowledge or the emotions or that content, I don't know how else to say it. But when we're talking about emotions and say safety, creating a safe space, I like to think that normalizing emotions. And even if somebody's angry, I don't want to, like we talk about neutralizing inflammatory language, usually about when they're talking about the other person, like, oh, he's a bastard, or oh, he's this or he's that, or whatever. And then trying to figure out what that feeling is. I tend to, whatever emotion they use, I tend to make it safe. And sometimes when my parties, especially when I did a couple gang crime things. I should take that out of there. I've only done a few. But emotions ran high. The cultural norm was to use a little bit more volume and profanity than I was used to. But it wasn't about me. And it was productive. So when I'm training new, especially attorneys in mediation, they talk about, well, that's not productive, or that's not safe. I think, you can create a safe space for people to express strong emotions. There are guidelines about what's going too far and what's unproductive,
Mm,
but I use the same structure, I suppose, in every mediation that I do. It's a very ritualized structure. Everyone is different, though, because there's flexibility, A, in when to do what, when to ask what. and B, in the content of that the parties bring and the weird specificity that we all bring to our lives and to the table. And that's what I like to honor, both that's those strong emotions, however you name them, and creating that safe space with while allowing the expression of strong emotion. So I don't know if I made any sense or if that was like all over the place, but
Yeah, it was completely mad. But yeah, the yeah, are you even allowed to use that word? I was going to bring it. No, it was fine. What I'm picking up here is about individuals, right? And again, using another film, The Life of Brian, we're all individuals, right? The it's about the specific differences. You've got two parties, and they might have similar stuff, but they've got different backgrounds from the last two people you had, from the two people you had before, and one of them might be the same. But the fact is that what happened to them that morning might be different, and we've got to keep in mind the curiosity that's coming through there, the fact that there are elements of the mediation ritual that help frame it, that help create this safe bubble, if you like, that you can express emotions, you can normalize things. It's
mm,
understandable if you're in a mediation that you don't come in a great place, otherwise you wouldn't be in mediation, you wouldn't need it, presumably. So I can get all that. Michael, pulling all that together and having a look at Tony Carney's question. If there's anyone else wants to send in messages or questions, drop them into the chat and we'll bring you in live in a couple of minutes here if you want to come on screen. But Tony asks, what is the place of emotions in mediation, picking up from what Janie's just said, and how do we as mediators help place them safely within the mediation process? So she's talked about acknowledging them and allowing some of that language out in different circumstances. What's your experience here, Michael?
So let me give you the background to answering the first part of Tony's question, and thank you, Tony, for it. I subscribe to the idea that self-determination, as we think about it in our work, applies to the process as well as to the outcome. So that means that the parties that I work with help shape the process rather than me.
Mm,
And I let them know that at the very beginning
mm,
and remind them periodically throughout the mediation that they can ask me questions. I'm not the only one who gets to ask the questions, and that the questions are about my approach, what I'm doing. And periodically, I will stop and ask the question, is this working? In what
mm,
way is it working? In what way is it not working? What other sorts of ways of interacting could be helpful? Because I've had situations in which uh, people are want to go fast and some want to go slow. Some are clearer, have a better ability to marshal their thoughts and their reactions, and others struggle a little bit. It's not a question of intelligence. It's a matter of their personality and how they communicate with one another. So to me, that it's really critical that the process be built around those needs.
mm,
That also then includes emotions and their desire to express their emotion or their reticence to do that. Some may want to be, at least see in their own minds that they're being rational, logical, unemotional, practical, and so on. Whether that's accurate or not, it's not important. That's how they see themselves. And somebody else may want to speak in language that is all built around feelings.
mm,
Our job is to support each person in being able to express themselves in the best way possible. One more thing I'll say about bringing emotion in is I don't, even though I've been trained in family therapy, I never consider myself as a therapist when I'm a mediator, and I try to. I'm always mindful and hopefully do a pretty good job of maintaining the boundary between what's therapy and what's mediation. That said, because of my training, I feel comfortable when people do express emotion, and that it becomes apparent because I'm comfortable not only with people expressing it, but with my ability to support them safely, as you said, Tony, because that's the critical thing. You don't want people just expressing themselves wildly. Um, it may be true, but in a way that is unhelpful to them in achieving their own goals, not to mention the impact on me and the other party.
Okay, so we can all start crying. Tony, you want to come in? Unmute yourself.
That's great, Michael. And I also would like to say I outrank you where naivety is concerned on mediation. I'd like to give a story about, because I think for me, what you're saying and what we agree on is, can we create a safe ecology that it's safe so that I come from a legal background where you're not allowed to express emotion in court. You're just dealing with facts. And so you will not be allowed. So, and we can have our own psychologies about moralities, about anger and things like this, but and we don't know what's going on in anyone else, and often they don't know what's going on in them either, actually, until it's triggered or something. And so, I'd like to give an example of how not to do it, which I did. And I outrank you too, Jane, dealing with gangs and things like that. So I once agreed to do a mediation in a separating couple in their house, save money, do it in their house. They agreed, they offered, they had a nice house, a big house, and the kids were away, and we agreed to do it, and it was going very well. They were, unlike you, we were going through the list, and custody and things like this. And we were going through it, and it was agreeable and trying constructive process. Then suddenly, as they started talking about who was going to get the house and who wasn't going to get the house and how they were going to deal with that, one of them just got up and yelled out, "To hell with effing this," completely out of the blue, and went from the dining room area, which we were in, to the kitchen and pulled out a knife. And pulled out a knife. And completely out of the blue, there was no argument going on, completely out of the blue, pulled out a knife, and then guess who got emotional? Me. What the hell is this? Then they put the knife down because they were looking for the car keys. And the car keys were in there, and they grabbed the car keys and drove off at 90 miles an hour from the situation. And it was my fault because I agreed to mediate in a place that wasn't safe. It was loaded in this person in a way that they didn't know until it came down. And I've since then completely refused ever to mediate in the family home because I had no guarantee that it was safe, that what was going to get triggered in that situation. And so that was my fault and my mistake, even though they agreed to it and volunteered it in the way. I had no way of knowing what it was going to be like. And this person was triggered emotionally just by the very fact of we're having to decide, whereas previously it was just a practical issue of who gets it and who moves out. It suddenly became this emotional issue, and in that moment, I had no idea what they were going to do with that knife because I couldn't get out of that situation. And so that's why I asked that question of how do we make it safe? What do we do? What do we don't do? And you can't guarantee anything in a situation, but you can guarantee what you don't do. I think is the lesson I take from that, is to guarantee what you won't do, where you won't go, and something like that. So it scared the living bejesus out of me, and I've never done it again. And I take responsibility for it, even though it was their suggestion and their idea. So for me, it's this idea of how do we create a safe place, Michael, and everybody else, so that you risk manage without controlling, if that makes sense.
Makes sense to me. I don't know if anyone wants to come in. Do you take guns to your gang meetings, Janie, or a bottle of wine with you? Ilona, I don't know what you would do with those. Can we maybe bring in Jim? We'll come back to Tony's point in a wee second, but I want to continue that with Ilona, because you were chatting about the difficulty of reframing or the skill sometimes in different languages as you would deal with. Are there other issues around this issue that Tony's brought up about safety? And I suppose we should really be talking about emotional safety, but also physical safety that Tony feels that you want to come in, Alona. And then if there's anyone else in the audience wants to come in, I see Joanne's got a comment in there too. I'll come back to that in a second. Alona, maybe bring you in for a second.
Yeah, there is around safety, like physical safety, of course, but there's also this mental safety. And I think there's the opposite of it is uncertainty. So, well, Tony, and I thank you very much for this. So I will never do that. I've never done that so far, but now I know exactly why I would not do that. But yeah, uncertainty. So I think in a certain way, as a mediator, we have to be open-minded, curious, but also a bit brave to go into it because we don't know what's coming and what the people will upload, download, or whatever say to us. And I think we have to be flexible and emotionally really intelligent people. Otherwise, we could not be as flexible as we have to be when something comes up, and not to lose our face as well, and not to jump into things we might regret afterwards, and which will be definitely not be helpful for our participants. So uncertainty, I was looking for the word just before we got on the video here, because it just was out of my head. So sometimes things like this happens when I speak in different languages, and uncertainty is something which is very interesting because it gives us energy, and it can be ignition for something because we can be curious because we don't know what's coming. But it can be also an emotion which is more in the direction of risk taking and a little bit fear, but kind of like annoying feeling of, okay, can I do this? Can I take this case on or not as well? Would I be happy to take them on? Am I the right mediator for that? And as I'm doing a lot of stuff online, but also in face-to-face, and sometimes when I do the information and assessment meeting for FMNI, and I see the parents separately. That's the only time when I see them separately, actually, which is a really nice way to get them known and to give them this private, safe space to express themselves. And sometimes I say, no, I don't think that they are right for online. And it's a feeling, it's an emotion which is created while speaking to them. That I see, okay, there's a different dimension in their conflict, which is probably not right, not suitable for online. It would be better if they would be in the room. And sometimes it's really like people asking for Zoom because they're living in different places and so on. And then still say, no, I don't take them on online. I would like to see them in the room. And to have this flexibility as well to choose what I do then with them, and not to convince them to be in the same room, but to decide and say, okay, let's meet up then and then in the office. This minimizes a little bit this uncertainty in the way that I really go with my gut feeling, kind of, when I assess them, or when no, I don't assess them, actually, I assess if our service is right for their issue. And it really gives me always a very good feeling when I have this freedom to decide, okay, do I do online with them or in the office face to face? And up to now, I have the impression that I was always kind of right, and it's not about being right or so, but I had the gut feeling, okay, no, I don't want to see them online, I want to see them face to face. I always had the impression that we were better off face to face than online. It can be the other way around as well to make things easier. But I think this gut feeling as a mediator, maybe, I don't know, that's something hopefully I developed right, or just have, I don't know.
Am I picking you up right? Are you trying to increase certainty in the process or likelihood of success? Is that what you're doing? Because you think it might not work one way or t'other?
Well, but I don't know if if I try to increase it, but I try to control, obviously, things, which you should not do, of course. No? So yes, so I invite. What I wanted to say is, I think I try, although I'm afraid of uncertainty, I try to invite uncertainty as far as possible.
Okay, grand stuff. We'll bring in Janie there because it ties in with Joanne's question there. I think where you've got this weighing it up, Michael, embracing uncertainty and encouraging and parties helping shape the process, I think he said. And Joanne says, meeting the parties where they are and not where we believe they should be or we would like them to be can be supportive within the mediation process. I believe as mediators, we can only create a safe enough space as safety must come from within each person. Any comments on what you've heard or on Joanne's comment?
Yeah, I'm just reading that. So yes, Joanne, I think I agree. Meeting parties where they are. I love the idea of let me go back to get this off my screen. I love the idea of creating a safe enough space and the idea of safety, again, kind of when I was talking before about who safety has to be, I think, a little bit more well defined because it doesn't mean comfortable, right? It doesn't necessarily mean comfortable. And so the idea of safe enough, language is so hard. I mean, one thing I loved about the TED Talk is that language really both helps us to understand and confuse certain situations and in certain situations. But when I'm working with parties, and it depends. Like my next case is it's a business, not just, but it's an organizational thing where the chief people officer is having issues with what he identifies as an emotional direct report, and it's just causing mayhem and blah 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 blah. So I like to figure out. I want them to be able to access their emotions, I guess. I want, and Michael was talking about the kind of the process. I feel good about the process again, but I want to create a space in which people feel safe enough to talk about and normalize their emotions, not in a situation in which they're calling each other names or um, doing things that could harm the situation, could harm it. But whenever I'm training new mediators, sometimes they just want to get to building bridges right away or identifying common ground immediately. And it's like, okay, that's cool. We're going to get to that, but we're not ready for that yet. And so like the example that Tony gave made me laugh because I've never had anything that extreme. But because those feelings didn't have an opportunity at that point yet, it was triggered by being in the home, but also maybe the process could provide an opportunity for some of those emotions that led that person to go grab their keys and exit. Um, that can be part of the resolution. Sometimes people can't even get to who gets the house and who gets the kids and who gets the dog until they can address some of those emotions. It might not be comfortable, but it's still up to us to make sure it's safe.
Okay, which I think brings us full circle back to Michael and your point about there's no point in trying to overstructure it or over control it. You've got to let the parties find their own way, and each set of parties, whether it's two or more, they're different. And our job is to help them show that difference to some extent. Is that what you're saying?
Well, exactly. I mean, we don't know anything about these people, really. They have whether it's a workplace dispute, neighbor, family, landlord, tenant, doesn't matter. We don't know how they really have interacted. We can try to define, with their help, define what the problem or the conflict may be, but how they got there, who they are as individuals, and then how they became as they interacted with one another, we haven't a clue. So I think that investing them, inviting them, encouraging them to help build as much of the process as is possible also helps them build a solution that is appropriate to them. So that's why I'm interested, and I don't assume that people will have an emotional reaction to anything, or if they do, that they will necessarily want to express that in my presence. So that's up to them. My task is, as both Tony and Joanne talked about, is to help create the opportunity for them to be as authentic as they choose to be.
Okay. And I suppose part of that would be bringing that out in the initial sessions, the one-to-one sessions, where you can maybe get more of a sense of that, and build up some kind of rapport with them individually before you bring them together. Certainly, that's the way I would be looking at mediation. So much of today's discussion has been about when they're in together in joint session, but there's an awful lot of work, an awful lot of prep, and bonding between mediators and trying to get some of that understanding that you say we don't really have, which we clearly don't, but at least we're getting a sense of something in the one-to-one sessions that we do, I think.
Scott, we should have one of these talks about meeting separately and meeting jointly with parties. I won't say more about it except that I think that there are a range of ideas that would be fascinating to explore with everyone.
Okay, well, why don't we do that? We'll find something. It won't be on mediation, Michael. It'll be on something completely different, but it'll be on how we could apply that in the one-to-one sessions and into the joint sessions as well. Why don't we do that, folks? That would be good. We've come to the end. We've come to the end, folks. Look, if you have any questions or any ideas for TED Talks that we can look at, try and make them not too long. We like them, around about 10 minutes, or so that we get more of the panel discussion. But thank you so much to everybody for turning up today, and thank you to Ilona Keep Look, who is there shaking her head at the moment, and
Yeah.
to Janie and her ceremonies and such like, and to, of course, Michael Lang as well for all those insights. And to Tony, thanks very much for the question and coming on. If any of the rest of you want to come on, please do. And we'll see you next month at some stage when we'll have another video and we'll look at how you apply it in the single sessions and in the joint sessions. Take care, everyone. Bye bye.